The company Bill Williams Quiet could be an interesting value stock for 2025 that might exceed expectations. The ticker is PPC, and I'll show you why. This could be a potentially promising stock. By the way, I don't have this stock in my own portfolio. Now, what's interesting is that it scores very high on factors again, but it's a cyclical stock, so it could also be a momentum play. And on the other hand, we see that, for example, Morningstar, which looks more at the long term. And of course, the intrinsic value tries to calculate, in other words, the intrinsic value for the long term. That indicates the fair value. According to them, it's 38, while the current price is 45. Other analysts believe that the current price target of around 46 is justified. We'll see. It's a somewhat riskier stock, but it could be a value idea. Why? Because it's cyclical. So if it materializes more or less in the long term, it seems to be looking good. In another video, we actually highlighted Carnival, but let's take a look at PPC, Pilgrim's Pride. And here, of course, the whole situation stands out. What is the long-term growth going to do? It has recently increased a lot in value, and the price to earnings ratio now seems very low. Actually, with cyclical stocks, you should mainly buy when the price to earnings ratio seems very high. After a significant drop, because they might be making temporary losses, the cycle goes up again. So, might be a wrong time to buy Pilgrim's Pride. But maybe it's an interesting idea to look into further for 2025. So the final conclusion and judgment, I'll leave that to you. This is purely and simply the inspiration for further research. If we look at the estimates for 2025, analysts expect a decline, but there aren't many of them at all. So yes, the question is, do they have a point? Yes or no? In any case, factor analysis still indicates a strong buy in the short term right now. For example, momentum is very strong, but also EPS revision according to this date model is positive. So people expect that the number will make more profit, at least in the short term. The luck ratio is very low. So this doesn't seem to add up. You see, the price to earnings ratio is low in the sector right now. Median, and there is something happening in this sector, but I'm really not an expert in it. But Pilgrim's Pride is, of course, active in chickens and pigs. In any case, for example, eggs from chickens, the price of eggs is starting to rise a lot. So that could be interesting. Also for this company, it's relatively a bit larger. The market cap is 10 billion and total debt is not on the low side, I would say, but they do have relatively some cash on hand. Growth seems a bit mixed, but still with the expectation, at least according to these analysts, that growth for next year is still realistic at 5%. If that's the case, then the valuation is certainly not low. And here the stock could possibly perform unexpectedly better, but it's a risk for the stock, cyclical stock, so it could very well go the wrong way. So I personally wouldn't invest in it, but maybe you know a lot more about it, and that's why the respiration takes longer. The tunnel equity is also very high right now. ZexRank, however, indicates that it's a strong buy, according to them. The quarantine target for the next 6 to 12 months is estimated at $48. If you look at the movement, you can at least expect a lot of volatility. A price drop of minus 50% is actually nothing for this stock. And what's interesting is that now, at this moment in the short term, the stock is also starting to decline. So purely based on technical analysis, we see that the MACD is starting to decline below. That's never really a positive signal. The Sugestics is also declining. The price level drops below 1, makes 20. So those are actually 3 signals for the very short term that aren't very positive for this stock. It's also very high. At least that might seem to be the case, but there can be long-term growth. You only see the frequent cyclical declines. A drop of at least 50% feels like nothing, and it happens at least 1, 2, 3, 5 times. So maybe this is the 6th time. Well, then it will at least drop to about here. So then it could find a nice new support level at previous prices around 36. But that's all just basic technical analysis, and personally, I don't believe in it. So always look at the fundamental analysis, but also know that volatility can be profited from. At Happy Investors and Business Investors International, we actually share value stocks on a monthly basis, but also growth stocks and dividend stocks. You can gain access to those happy value stocks monthly value stocks, ideas, but also monthly top value stocks. Or are you actually already trying them? 3, value, growth, and dividend stocks. Or internationally the same offerings, but then in English through Business Investors, or in Dutch, Happy Investors. One of the stocks of 2022 was Call Name, the same sector, the same industry, and we had recommended that 2022 after a decline. Yes, about 20%. Since then, for a while, the stock had risen, then it dropped again. Look, but even a drop of about 5%, maybe just a little more, I don't know the exact date, more, and actually now, about 3 years later, the stock is still quite a bit higher. The same can happen at PPC. There could possibly be a further decline. To what price level it exactly drops, no idea. You can see that long term, the circular growth is, that's about it. Only the question is more about the short term. What happens? So this stock is really interesting for further investigation, and especially if they can resume growth, then the current valuation does seem to be cheap. But watch out for the cyclical decline. I'm really curious to know what you think about it. Or do you have more knowledge about this company? Then let me know in the comments and help others, including myself, also more knowledge about this company.